Okay, am I live again? Can you hear me this time? Let's have another go. Yeah, can you hear me now, Scott? Yep, got it sound this time now. It's basically the desktop sound and speaker picking up, and the webcam and the microphone. So this is the issue I was hoping we was going to have yesterday when we didn't have that many people on there. But got to wait for thousands to come on there to stress me right out to the hilt. So far so good. Let's just wait 15-20 seconds, because that's a delay on YouTube from what I'm recording here. So any questions you've got takes about 15 seconds or so before I actually get to see them on my screen. So we lost quite a few there then as the numbers were building up. Let's just check that it's still all going before I start. So if anybody's on Facebook, if they can do me a favor and tell them I'm on a different stream now, just because they're probably just looking at the old one and hanging about on there. Okay, so you can see I've got the pan pastels out this time. As I mentioned a little bit earlier on, somebody had said, why didn't I use the pans on the right hand side, and basically the only reason for that was I showed different ways, different supplies, different techniques, just so that those of you who haven't got to go out and buy lots of different supplies, you're going to think you need everything to do even small studies. So that's why I show lots of different things. Obviously, as I did mention on our little 10-second live stream, that doesn't take from the enjoyment. If you want to go out and buy as much as you want, you know, from past experiences, I like to encourage people to buy. And with the situation we've got now, I'm sure you're all glad that I said that, because everybody should be well stocked up. So okay, looks like the sound's working okay at the moment, so I might as well crack on and make a start on this left hand side. So if you've got any questions, I'm seeing the chat. Don't forget I got that little sound delay on there before I see the chat that I can speak. So if you ask a question and I don't answer it, if you repeat it a little bit later on, chances are I'll spot it then and I'll be able to answer it there. So Henny has asked, do I fix a drawing between layers? I've never had to with pastel matte paper, and that's the paper I'm always using, pastel matte paper. It's not a sanded surface, it's kind of a cork surface. It's got a bit of a fuzzy feel to it when you touch it, but it takes many layers. So I've never really found a need to fix it. And to be honest, a lot of these fixatives don't actually fix it that well anyway. It's not really what you're thinking. It doesn't make a surface that you can't rub off unless you really saturate it. And that affects a lot then with the colours and tones and all of that. So that's why I don't really use it, and I really don't use it for a last layer. Somebody have asked, can you mix pastels with polychromos or Caran d'Ache luminance? If you're going to use coloured pencils, it's got to be going on top of the pastel. You've got to remember that pastels or coloured pencils that are wax or an oily surface in them, that's going to then make the pastel resist when it goes on top. So obviously what we can do is put pastel underneath. You can use coloured pencils for fine details on top, but you can't do it the other way around. And I generally use just the pastels. Now the main reason behind that is when a pastel is on the surface, it's very, very matte. So you can move the, I'll just make a start as I'm talking. So you can move the paper around in any light and you won't see any shine or any glare. But with coloured pencils, they usually leave a shiny surface. So it looks a bit weird if you've mixed pastels and coloured pencils on the same drawing. So that's why I really like to use just one or the other. Obviously for me it's preferably pastels. Okay, so just a normal standard piece of white paper, because I know lots of you or some of you have not seen my Patreon channel, so you wouldn't see me using pans perhaps. So I just use standard printer paper. It's a shiny or a slippery surface, so the pastel doesn't really stick to that very well. It sticks to the actual soft tool, this little sponge applicator that I've got, from which you can get these from panpastels.com. Okay, so we could be doing this with soft pastels, we could be doing it with pastel sticks or pencils, doesn't really matter. This is going to be the underlayer. I'm just brushing it on or rubbing it on. We don't want much, we don't need much. I'm going to rub it in with my fingers as well. It pushes it into the tooth of the paper, and basically all I'm doing here is just indicating where these elements are going to go, and I'm not too bothered about them. I'm not too worried how accurate they are. I use pans just as a base layer. You can of course use it to complete the whole drawing or painting, whatever you want to call it. But personally I like to use them as the base layer, and then I can build up on top of that. And it was only a couple of minutes before I decided to go live that I thought, I know, I'll put some pans on this other side just to add to the stress of getting things done quickly. I thought I'd challenge myself doing that as well. Lesson learnt. You just mix these colours together just as you would paint. Now because this pastel matte paper is not too far off the colour that I want the underlayer to be anyway, you don't see a great deal of difference, but it is going on there. Okay, we're up to around 100 people or so, 60 to 100 people. So a few have come back. Did lose a lot at that big sound mistake at the beginning, but learnt that lesson. The trouble is, until you push live, you can't tell if it's really working or not, because you can't hear it yourself. If I want to darken an area, I can add a bit of black in there as well. So this area by here needs to be a bit darker. Coming around, like I say, just roughly blocking in, indicating where these areas are going to be. Those familiar with my Patreon channel, you know I talk about the map that I create a lot. The underlayer, the map. These things are too complicated. When you start looking at the reference, it's too complicated to take it all in sometimes. By creating a bit of a map like this, let me just mix up this colour. To create a bit of a map, it becomes easier to see what we need to do on top. And because we can put lots of different layers on there, then we can adjust it all the time. So we don't have to be worried. Like, I know that colour's nowhere near. Doesn't really matter. I can adjust with the next layer on top. More interested in the tones, the light and the dark at the moment. Again, some pastel down on the surface, rather than worrying about getting everything spot on. Remember, this is when I'm doing these live streams as well, these are pretty much sketches. Obviously I'm talking as I'm doing it, I can't concentrate as easily. Sometimes I've got to pause and have a bit of a think as well. Yeah, that's starting to come. We need a lot more rich colour up there, but I can alter that with my pencils a little bit later on. Need a bit of highlight by there. Comes across the top. And then a bit of this grey colour coming down into here. Now, you've got the option then with pans that you can start to use the soft tools with smaller sponges, but I think I'll just carry on with just a few of these colours and then switch over to the pencils. The soft tools, I say they come, you can get smaller ones as well, so that means we can get into these areas a lot more easily. But then I'm thinking, well, pencils do that a little bit better anyway, so I'll just go in with the pencils instead. Okay, so you can see I haven't even, let's move these out the way because I've got a bit of limited space by here. Haven't even really gone too crazy looking for the right colours there at all. Just thinking about the tones, and then I can get the old pencils and a bit more accuracy. But let's rub this in first. You see with pastel matte, it doesn't really move much at all. I've done all that and just get a little bit of the pastel on your finger and wipe that off then with microfiber cloth. Rub this into, darken it up, smudge it all just slightly together, so that gives us a base to think about, something to work on top of. If you hear a lot of noise and it's wind basically on the studio windows, we've got not too bad a day here today weather-wise, but it is very, very windy. You see how I can just put some of the pencil on top, lightly on the side, and use my finger, even though that looks dirty, not a lot's going to come off of it, and rub that in again, tone in the colours. You can layer one colour on top of another really easily with pastel. Let's put the area of the eye in as well, so we've got, it goes quite dark around here. Dark down to there. As I said, it's all very complicated looking on the reference photo at the beginning. Get a bit of a brown in there. And this is why I like oils as well, because they both really forgiving mediums, and by that I mean we can layer on top and adjust corrections. And I like to be able to adjust corrections because I make a lot of mistakes. Well, not necessarily mistakes, but I need extra layers to get my accuracy going better. And obviously when you're doing your work, you know, talking at the same time, that adds a little bit to the difficulty, that's for sure. I like to get something quite light in there fairly early on. If you remember, if you've seen other videos, helps to judge the tonal areas. So if I've got a dark in there, that shows me that part of the tonal scale. Just looking for my pencils, picking some out. If I've got a light in there, obviously that shows me a different part of the tonal scale. With dramatic works, we normally got a wide range of lights and darks going on, as we've got in this reference. So that's just roughly going in for now. As I said, I need to work out where these various areas go, because we don't want to be putting something really in the wrong place. So I'm going super light. You can see all this needs to be blue. The blue comes down like that. Give that a rub in as well. And then a little bit darker down here. If you're asking, Margaret, was that white? I can't tell because you've seen 15 seconds or so after me, but if you're talking about this pencil, this is a Gioconda number 28, so it's very light pink. The only white one I've got in my hand at the moment is this little Faber-Castell, one. The Gioconda are good pencils, very good pencils, but they're super soft. These are Gioconda ones, and so that makes it, as you would expect, that bit more difficult to sharpen, which can be a bit of a nuisance if they keep snapping. Okay, so that's the idea of where that's going to go. I've got some dark blue over here on the eyelid, and then up above here it's dark, but it's not black, it's a rich colour. And if you haven't got that in your set, because you'll find a lot of dark browns, really dark browns that can be rich in that area, you won't actually find them in any set, so you can put it in and then put a bit of black on top, or vice versa, and I'll play with this as I'm working on it and refining areas. And sometimes if you need a dark area like this, you can put the dark underneath first and then kind of layer or float richer area on top. So I can rub that in, and then you can go on top and kind of keep it dark, but you see how you influence the colour a bit. Surprising, there's lots and lots of different colours going on in this this head, this face. Got that rich colour going on here as well. They all look a bit strange, they all look like makeup until I start to refine it, and hopefully it'll work out. And I'll have a quick look for some questions. If anybody got any questions you want to ask as well, just give it a go, and I'll get to those as fast as I can. Right, I need something a bit darker down there on that bottom section here. What I really want is a darkish bluey purple. Just go like that. Not bad, that all looks a bit strange at the moment. We've got lots of people from around the world on here today. It sounds a bit like one of those beauty pageant. We've got Florida, South Africa, America. Okay, let's go a bit darker by here and I'll just get this shape a bit better. Let's calm down a bit now after that initial panic. Things wasn't quite going right. I remember when I said to you yesterday, when you're starting your artwork, take a little bit of time before you rush into it to make sure you're relaxed enough, calmed down enough from the day, or you're just going to tense up, bring that into your art. And I won't be doing really the relaxation bit that comes along that's good for us. This paper I'm resting on, glassine paper, it's this paper that you get if you buy the pastel mat in the booklets. It's the paper that comes in between, interleaved with it. But you can buy it separately from virtually all the art stores, and it's usually really cheap. Comes in big sheets, but it's the same stuff. So don't go throwing that out when you've got your art box. Use that. It's a bit bluer up by there. Surprising how blue it is across the top of this brow. It's a gelada monkey. Really expressive faces and eyes. Right. Let's warm up the skin a bit by here. Use the pencils a lot on the side when I'm doing these initial layers. I'm not filling the tooth of the paper up. I don't know what that is, but there, let's have a look. A bit of roughness on the paper. That's interesting. Now whether, if that's a big fault on the paper that won't fill in, I've got an alternative then to put a dab of gouache paint on there, let it dry. Doesn't got to be thick, just enough to fill that in. Now the reason I use gouache paint is because it dries completely matte, just like pastel matte. It feels just like pastel matte, so you could put that on, and because it's matte, it will not be a problem. The pastel will go straight on top of it. Now sometimes with pastel matte paper, what you'll find is there's these little white dots like this, and if you rub them with your fingernail, they'll come off. I think it's a release paper they use in the production of it. I think it interleaves into a release paper, and I think that's what's coming off of there. And sometimes it sticks on there. I have told them about it. Pastel matte paper is not cheap, you want it right. But this one is from a book, one of the pastel matte books, and I know they had problems with their supply or with their quality a year or two ago, and this book that I've got is definitely that old, so it's probably still the old stock there that I'm having the fault with. Okay, starting to come together a little bit. You can see what I mean about building up the layers with the realism. If I show the other side, now you can see the difference then with more and more layers building on top. This middle bit I'll just, when I work on it all as a whole, then I'll start to bring that up to the same level of that, of completion. Okay. Goes down a bit there. We've got these creases we'll put in after. Oh, I'll put in after. Right. Okay, let's work on that eye a bit more. I like to get one area fairly accurate so that I can then match the rest up to it. I've got some more new studio lights as well, which I want to tell you all about soon. I told you recently about the ones I've got from the Daylight company. Just looking for some other pencils a second. And this one is from the same company, but it's a different shape. And the other one that I showed you recently is more suited to working flat, or works really well when you're working flat. And I'm working flat here now, basically because it's easier to record like this. But I know lots of you from home then perhaps working upright or at a 45-degree angle, which is how I prefer to work myself. And the problem with that one that I found out, that lamp, is that when you're working at an angle like that, if the foot of it is not flat on a desk, then it starts to, the arm of it starts to kind of like creep forward, or it won't hold in place at all, even because it's just meant to be on a flat surface. So that was a bit of a problem that I didn't foresee. So I went back and had a look at what else I had, because the actual daylight bulb of it itself, the lightness, the colour of it was brilliant, the best I'd ever had. So I found then a different type of handle, more like a snake neck one. So I assume it's got some form of metal inside of that, and you can bend that into any position and it holds really tight. So that means if you've got that 45-degree or 90-degree angle, it'll still hold in position. And it's got two lights coming out of the top as well, and you can put them either both on or on individually. And you've also got 4 different brightness settings, and it's pretty much half the price of the other one. So win-win. So I bought 2 of those as well. And then the company that saw my review, the Daylight company of the first one, said, "We like that review so much, if we send you some more lights, will you review them?" And I said, well, yeah, a little bit late though, because I've just bought them myself, which is typical. So what I've actually done now, I've come to an agreement with them, and we will be able to offer those with a discount code for America and UK only, unfortunately, because that's where they deliver to. So I think it, if I remember rightly, it was 15% off for you guys. I get a small commission, but you know me, if something's not good, and I told this to the Daylight Company as well, if I don't like the product, I say that online. If I do like it, I say that as well. So it's a completely impartial review, the ones that I've done. But now I'm getting that little commission. Obviously I've got to tell you guys about that, but you will see in the videos that those are the lights I'm using, and I'm using those now. On the one side of me I've got the one with the arm, and on the other side I've got the newer one that I've just bought with the twin lights on. So very shortly I'll be getting those codes to you all, so you can take a look at those if you've been struggling with your studio lighting, because I know it's been a real nuisance for me trying to find something that wasn't so massive in the studio and taking up so much space. That's not quite dark enough. Let's take a look here. Squint a lot at the early stages because it takes away the habit or the detail. You can get caught up in all of that, and you don't want to be looking at detail yet. Not for a long time. This is still really early blocking in type of stage. I'm not looking at details. And these go a lot deeper here as well. Okay, any questions? Michaela, my husband hates my light. Is it very bright? So I said the one with the twin lights on, the twin tubes, got 4 settings on each one, so you could even have it down low enough to be kind of like a bedside light, or you can have it all the way up, and then yes, they do go really nice and bright. That pencil is in some sort of holder. Yes, that's a Derwent pencil extender. So it's basically just a bit of metal. You put the pencil in. That allows you to use the pencils when they get down really small like that, where you would normally then be throwing it away. So you can get it right the way down before you've got to throw it away. Would I recommend Caran d'Ache pastel pencils? I've got a few of them. I don't use many of them. I said yesterday on the first part of this, they're really expensive. They're about 3 times the price of the Pitt and the Carbothello that I use. So they are very expensive. They got extremely great light fastness on there, but they're also very soft. And for me, that means on the underlayers, they are prone then to fill in the tooth of the paper a bit more than things like Carbothello and Pitt. So you've got to be concerned about that, and they're also a real nuisance to sharpen because they break really frequently. So I don't use many of those at all. I've got a few, and they're mainly the dark browns in that range, because in lots of ranges of pencils you can't get a really good rich dark brown, and theirs are about the best, so I'd recommend those. Do I find some colours of pastel mat have better surface than others? Some seem to be smoother, harder to layer on. Yeah, but I've not found it a big problem at all. But there's definitely some form of difference in between some of the layers. Now I don't use many different colours, so I don't, for instance, use this blue very often. I usually stick to the grey, the brown, sometimes the sienna as well. So I don't find a lot of difference with those colours, really. So I don't find much problem with that. But there is definitely some difference going on in there, whether or not this is due to the pigment that they are using for the different colours of the sheets. I don't know. Right, okay. So I'm going to use like a stipple effect on here when I want to get the skin texture, and just tap that on, so I know I can do that. I think I'll get a bit darker down here. This needs to go a lot darker. You're always asking yourself questions in your mind when you're drawing, which area needs to be lighter, which area needs to be darker. And trying to match that up and make adjustments all the time. Like I'm thinking now, this needs to be darker and bluer down here. When we get this darker, then the skin all of a sudden starts to look lighter and richer. Sometimes I use circular motions like that. Turn your pencil, then carry on, because what that's then doing is actually sharpening the pencil into a nice point, rather than keeping it in one position and then you're basically just flattening it all the time. And then down here goes there, comes down, that goes really dark there. Got kind of a ridge that goes down the nose, and then this one will come up here eventually. I'll sort that in the middle section out. So I'm squinting again, looking again, that comes up there a bit. And still rubbing in on the early layers, creating a softish looking underlayer, underdrawing. But then when I'm doing detail, then that's when I'll stop this rubbing in process. Okay, so this blue should have come over here a bit more. So the blue is obviously a reflection of the light of the sky, the blueness of the sky above. And you can make it a bit more vibrant like I did there. Can tone it down a bit, but sometimes it's good to increase that vibrancy and make it a bit more punchy. It's up to you as the artist what you want to do. Don't forget, you don't have to go copying a reference exactly. We can make the adjustments. Do I arrange your pastel pencils by colour or brand? Emma asked. I did start doing it by brand. Then I started doing it more by colour, because that makes a bit more sense. So that's what I do now. So it depends really on how many you got. I got so many now that doing it by brand doesn't really work, and colour is better, because that's the thing you're really looking for. The only annoying part is that really the colours are not exactly what you're seeing even on the tip of the pencil when you apply it to the surface, so it's still quite a lot of trial and error, but that so far that's the way I'm doing it. We've got Adriana from Brazil as well. Right, okay, so that's fairly okay by there so far. Let's try and enrich this pink by here. Make it a bit warmer, I think. Come up there. It's good that you see things like that little inclusion there, because you know then it's not the end of the world, you can actually save it. But if I wasn't doing this video now as a live stream, I would have done that immediately, because if it didn't work, I've not lost a great deal of time and effort on it. Whereas once you've got a couple of hours in on a drawing, you don't particularly then want something that's not working like that. So I've not put any real highlights in yet. You'd notice we save the highlights till last, building up layers just like I would with oil painting. This thick pencil, this is a Conti pencil, so we've got a few brands on the go. So we've got these thick Contis, we've got Pitt, I've got Carbothello, I've got somewhere in there Caran d'Ache, I've got Gioconda. So I'm not a slave to any brand at all, which is good. What make is the light blue one? If it's that light blue one, that's the Gioconda. The only ones that got these tips to them like that as the Pitt, so the German Pitt pastel, Faber-Castell there, and then the Gioconda. You see I've just got a bit of paper around there where that shows the difference when you use the pencil to the top. It's quite a bit of difference, and I was going to do that with all my pencils, and one day I may do it. I may do it, I may not. Seems like a good idea at the time, but when it was taking so long, I kind of gave up on that idea. Am I using pencils only to increase detail and realism? What you find is, unless you've got a massive set, the cheapest way to get lots of different colours is to buy the pencils. So that's why people generally start off with those. But you could just use, you know, soft pastels as well. So it's nice, especially if you've got a big, if you're doing something really big, that's when you want the you want some soft pastels or pan pastels too, because otherwise you really rip through your pencils and they won't last very long at all. So that's the main benefit of using the pencils then. Do I select all the colours you need before you start, then stick with those, or work from your collection in full? Janet. Both. I do it both ways, to be honest. Sometimes I pick, if I've got something very complicated and I want to take my time, I'll pick out a lot of colours, but always, even if I pick them out, I end up going back to my sets and picking out more anyway, as I see refinement that needs to be done. But it does help a lot, so you haven't got to get confused in your set all the time by looking for different things. So it is a good way to actually do that and get, you know, accurate colours. I definitely do it with pan pastels because I've got the set of those, they just take up too much space otherwise to have everything out all the time. So I definitely look for the specific colours and just get them out of my set rather than get everything out. So this needs to be a bit more vibrant blue up there. Okay, so it's starting to come together a bit more. Usually I'm quicker working, but obviously when I'm talking as well, it slows me down. So there you can see one of those Caran d'Ache pencils. So the browns I use, these dark browns, they're all called 788 as far as I know, but the one is a 748 and the other one is a 408. So 748, 408, and they're really nice dark browns, rich browns. As I said, you don't get that very often in any of the other pencils, so it's worth just getting those even if you don't get anything else. Sometimes I thought about getting the set, but the set costs about a good few £100, and every single time then I decide that if I did get them, I would probably not use them as much as I should, because I'd be thinking of all the time how expensive they are, and that's no good if you've got supplies you're not going to use. My favourite white pencil putting on top is the pit is whiter than, there's no simple answer to anything with pastels, is there? Let's be honest. Let me explain. The pit is whiter, or the whitest of all actually, is the Caran d'Ache. Okay, so that's the whitest pencil that I've come across. Problem with it is usually want the whites for the detailing, usually at the end, and then because it's so white you can't sharpen it very sharp, and then you can't do the tiny details. So then you've got the pit pencil. So the Gioconda is similar, if not softer than that, so I just never use that. I can't even sharpen it. So then you've got the pit. That's a bit softer than the Carbothello. So you can see what I'm going to say. The Carbothello is not quite as white, but it'll sharpen really pointy. The pit is a little bit whiter, but is a bit softer, so it can be prone to breaking a bit more, and the Caran d'Ache is really soft but whiter. So there's your answer. If it's a large area and I want it very, very white, I'll use the Caran d'Ache. If the area is smaller, I'll use the pit. If that one's breaking all the time for whatever reason, I'll use the Carbothello. If you want something even whiter than any of these, that's when you start using the pastel sticks and the soft pastel. They're going to be even more opaque, and they're going to be a lot more punchy as well. So that's my take on whites. And when I say sticks, it could be something like a Conti stick, which you can sharpen like this, just on a bit of sandpaper, or it could be Faber-Castell sticks. There's lots and lots of different types out there. So once again, you don't have to be a slave to any particular brand. They all work together seamlessly. Okay, could start to look at doing a bit more detailing. I want to get the basic colour. That's a bit too orange. Get the basic colours going before we start to detail on top. So let's warm that area up a bit more. Comes down into there a bit. Build that layer up by blending it. Okay. You can add texture as well. by not blending now and just building up the actual texture and roughness, just like I would do with say for instance a elephant skin. Down here it goes quite blue. Surprising how blue it is down here. As I say, it goes really dark on this area. Just have a look for any more questions, just a quick scroll through. Screen or print out, which is the best way to match the colours? What I like to do is actually depends. If your printer can print out quite accurately, then I think that's a really good way of doing it, because the way I think about it is some people think, how should I put it, if they see something in real life, they find it extremely difficult to think how they're going to do that in colour. So in, you know, pencils or oils, how they transfer that to be able to do it. Once they printed it out, we know that a printer has got perhaps say 5 colours or a few more in than that. But what it's done, a printer has taken an image that looked kind of, you know, three-dimensional and real, and it's just used those colours to print it onto white paper, so onto a 2D surface. So if a printer can do it like that, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do it with our pencils or with our paints or our supplies. So I think people can then kind of relate to that better. So that's one good reason why a printout is good. Also, you can get the printout really close, like I've got here, to your drawing, and the closer the better. When you're using something like a tablet screen, then the thing with that is that it's being lit. So rather than being printed, it's being lit. So that's got its advantages and disadvantages as well, because it does show us more of what we would be seeing in real life because it is lit, but it can be difficult to look out and match the colour. So once again, no simple answer, but what I do, if I've got a subject that's all about the colour, so say I'm doing a sunset or a seascape type of sunset, and it's really all about getting those colours and tones and things there in place and accurate and vibrant and punchy, that's when I'm more prone to be working from a screen. If I'm after detail and things like this, it doesn't have a real big amount of vibrant colours that are sometimes lost in a print, that's when I like the print. And there's no reason as well why you can't use both. So you can use your iPad for the look of the colour, or your tablet, and you can use the printout then for the details and accuracy, and the fact that you can get it really close. Okay, made by Dawn Hassey. Jason, I'm a new YouTuber. I love pastel pencils, but good pastel pencils are so expensive for me. Stabilo cost me about $50 for the 24 set, and Faber-Castell Pit Pastel cost over $200. Any cheaper pastels you would recommend? Depends on what country you're in. That's the issue with the import duty and things. so that's why perhaps Faber-Castell is dearer for you, the pit, if you're in the States, whereas you may find things like Generals much cheaper over there, whereas over here the European type of things like Pitt and Carbothello are much cheaper. So I've only really got experience with the ones that I've mentioned today, so I've never used any other brands that, like I say, if you're in America you may be able to get hold of that I would find very expensive. But if you're a beginner, then it's not a good idea. You don't have to buy the best, most expensive, like I've said, but don't cut lots of corners on your supplies, because you may very well be disappointed with them if you get something that's really cheap, and what you find is they haven't got much pigment in there then. So I'm just going to add just a suggestion now of texture. And I am using a Caran d'Ache. I say I've got probably got about 6 or 7 different pencils of those, because this is another unusual colour that I've got. This is a 093, kind of a subdued purple colour. Another good set, or another set that's got colours like that is Derwent, which over here are much cheaper, but I just don't seem to get on with those colours very much at all. And they are another one, even though they're quite hard, they're not a soft pastel, they're another one that is prone to breaking a lot. So much so that I haven't even mixed that set in with my other pastels. That's just my experience. I know some people really like them, but I just say what I find. So these lines come down here. I'll subdue them in a minute with a darker colour. What's my most favourite brand of pencil? Probably the one I started with, which is the Carbothello. If I only had to pick one, I'd probably still pick that, but there's really not much difference at all between that and Pitt, either of those really. If you found one that was substantially cheaper than the other, then I'd just go whichever one was cheapest. There's no massive difference in those brands at all. Certainly not to warrant spending much more on either one of them. What's your opinion on using white pastel mat with wildlife and human portrait paintings? I always see you using colour pastel mat. I got a problem with white. The issue is it's not the pastel mat as such. The thing with white is that you really can't easily judge tonal values when you're putting on the initial layer with white paper, because remember, I'm just laying some dark in here. You've got to let me think of the easiest way to put it while I'm roughing that in. Okay, so if we're doing this subject, for instance, or let's say we was doing a white polar bear, and lots of it is, you know, really white, pure white. Well then, when I'm putting in the underlayer, if I'm putting white down for the white fur, it's not going to show up. So that makes it extremely difficult to get a nice underlayer in quick that represents the full tonal range. Yeah. So that's why I almost always then use mid-tone paper, my favourite probably being the grey. Now the only real time I use white is if the subject is very, very colourful, or very, very light in lots of the areas, because if you're doing flowers, for instance, that's when I would be more likely to use white than anything else, because I want the white paper to punch those colours right up. And if you're using something very dark, then it can be more difficult to get the lighter shades and tones to show up on there. So that's when I would be much more inclined to be using a light coloured paper, but other than that I don't really use them at all for those reasons. Just putting some highlights in here because the pastels are so opaque, especially these lighter colours. You can layer quite easily on top. There you go, that's starting to come alive a bit more. Don't think you've got to put in every little detail for realism, you don't. A lot of realism is the tonal value, because if we lit this monkey with a green light, it'd look a bit strange, but it'd still be three-dimensional looking. It would still look like a monkey. You just know there's something green actually pointing onto it. What I'm going to do with these live streams in future is to actually keep them to smaller or shorter videos, so I can specifically work on various things that will be quicker for you all to see. Francisco says, my biggest difficulty is to finish the drawing. It loses a lot of vibrancy when I apply the varnish. So if you're saying the varnish is the fixative, then it will, so don't do it. There is no fixative out there that's really, really brilliant that I found. Every single one has got some sort of fault. The best one I found personally is Spectrafix, but also personally I don't use it on mine, because even that one adjusts some colours, not all of them. It's really strange. Some colours it doesn't make any difference to the colour, and other colours it makes a lot of difference to it. And I can't take that chance. I don't want to take that chance that I can get right to the end and then I've got a bit of Russian roulette going then, as in, is this going to work or is it going to ruin it? And I spend a lot of time on my, real proper drawings, not sketches like this. Spend a lot of time on them, getting the colours exactly how I want it, tones, shades. I don't want it then ruined right at the last bit because I've sprayed it with something and it's done what I couldn't predict. So that's why I wouldn't use it myself. When you frame your work, frame it behind glass, double mount, and then you won't need to spray it at all because nobody's ever going to touch it, or it shouldn't be, in theory. Do you ever toss a paint in before you've finished because you don't like the way it looks, or do you always finish what you start? I'm frustrated with my March challenge and don't know finish or toss. Susie. Good question. Problem with throwing your work away, right, is that it can be a bit of a get into a bit of a habit, and I found out many years ago. I had a bit of a run where things weren't turning out exactly as I wanted. Some of the reason was I was finishing too soon. So I was at a stage where I would now class as an underlayer. So you see what I mean about finishing too soon. And the other thing is that if you find you then tossing them out and it's getting frequent, you want to nip that in the bud, because that can be a habit that you keep doing all the time, and you're finding that you're not ever satisfied with what you do, and it gets a bit of a snowball effect. So unless you know there's no saving this, in which case, yeah, you know, don't waste any more time doing it. If you've made a mistake that can't be rectified because the paper is filled up completely and you're not happy with it, you're really not happy with it, you know, toss it and learn from it, start the next one. But understand fully why you're doing that first. Sometimes it's because a piece of artwork has lasted too long. It's you've been working on it too long and you've got fed up with it, and then you're looking for an excuse then to not keep going. So that's why I tell people, when they're doing their drawings, try and work within your ability a bit. Not saying don't push yourself, but don't go trying things that are way out of your league at the moment until you've got a bit more experience. So do things that you know you've got a good chance of getting right, to a level that you hope to achieve. And also I see lots of people, they really do something that's going to take, like, you know, lots of my drawings only take about 8 hours or so, because after that I start losing concentration a bit, getting a bit fed up. There's plenty of subjects I want to do, and they'll take something on. Like I remember when I did the Great Migration, I knew that was going to be a really big project. I knew it. It was okay. It was a commission. It was something I really wanted to do anyway. And I was fully aware how long that was going to take me. But they'll take something on and they're 8 hours in, and perhaps, you know, I do critiques as well, and they'll send me it and they say they're not happy with this part, they're not happy with that part. And I say, well, how long have you worked on it? And they'll say, well, you know, 8 hours, a good 8 hours, and it may be 2-3 foot wide. And I say, well, if I was doing that to the level I would want it at, that could take me, even, you know, with my experience, that could take me like 30 hours to do. And you're expecting all this detail to be on there in 8 hours? You know, you've got to say to yourself at the beginning, am I prepared to do, let's move out a bit, am I prepared to do what this artwork, this subject is going to require? Am I going to put in the work? Because if you're not, either do it so that it's a more of a study of it, or something a bit looser, or don't do it at all. If you're not prepared to do what you know it's going to take, don't do it. So always assess, if you're willing to put the work in. Then you'll find you'll have a lot less disappointments. And another one, when people send me work in and they're disappointed, and I tell them how long it would take me to do, well, I'll say to them, not being funny, but if you class what you've just done as your underlayer and carry on going for it now, build on top of that underlayer, it could be superb at the end. You know, classy as your underlayer, and keep working on it, keep refining. Look at your reference. Can you see differences? Can you easily see differences that you can adjust and rectify? So excellent idea to push your ability, but don't push it so far that you get massively frustrated, because that's a different thing altogether. So is everybody feeling in the world at the moment? I'm interested to hear what you're all thinking in different countries. Did you manage to stay off the news yesterday like I suggested? Not get drawn into all the drama that's around us all the time? Because hopefully your artwork can help to distance you from that a bit. You can see how I've built up the layers now. And when I started, it wasn't super accurate, and I'm talking as I'm doing it anyway, so it's not going to be brilliant, but you can see how it's getting a little bit more realistic. So if I'd stopped at a really early stage, well then this wouldn't have looked very good, would it? But I kept ploughing on, kept going through, went through the rubbish stage, hopefully. Coming out the other side a bit now. We're starting to look a bit more like I wanted it to. So if you think now that this is, if I class this now as an underlayer, do you see what I mean? And build on top of this, then the next layer is going to be even better, more refined. But if you wanted it to be more painterly, more impressionistic, then you can stop whenever you want. And if an area looks a bit confusing, you're not sure how to go about it, just do what you can see, just copy what you see in. Yeah, Molly's saying staying positive is a daily goal, and that's right. It's so easy to be drawn into all this news stuff. What I would say is, whether those things are right or wrong, there's not usually many people that can make that much of a difference. I doubt very much that Boris Johnson is going to give me a ring and say, look Jason, you can save the country, go and do a nice mural on the side of the wall of something. And what I'm getting at there is that chances are, if I stay off the news, that not a lot's going to change when I look on it the next day, and I wouldn't have missed much other than the drama that I can't actually do anything about whatsoever. So, you know, I'm not saying do the old ostrich and put your head in the sand, but what I am saying is there's only so much we can do. Do our bit. We don't have to keep being dragged down and into it all the time. You find if you stayed off the news for a day, or perhaps just went on there once and stayed off the rest of it, and instead potted around your garden or your house, do a few house chores, and try and pretend nothing's happening. Do your artwork, have a bit of a plan, do a bit of exercise. Brilliant idea. You feel much better, more able to cope straight away. I think lots of people are getting wise now to this news industry and how it's working, how they manipulate. Bit of texture going in there. See that white dot? You can't really see it now, so I'm not too bothered about that. That's okay, that's good enough. Right, and then up in that corner we've got a pale kind of a purpley blue. Wonder if that's too light. It's too purple. Perhaps I'll come back to that. I'll put a bit of grey in there for now, just to suggest that going in. See, when you're doing fur as well, do that twirling of the pencil I showed you earlier on, because every couple of strokes twirl that and it keeps a nice point on the pencil rather than having a flat spot again. So you sharpen your pencils before you start. Don't forget to do one of those woodless pencils in your sharpener, otherwise you'll go seem blunt really quick. Do that twirling. You won't be sharpening all the time. I don't sharpen very often. I can't be bothered to sharpen with a blade personally. Maximum how many layers can be done on pastel matte pencil with pencils? Well, if you're really pushing into it, okay, so let's say, pretty sure I got a video of that as well. If you look on my YouTube, it's a video about detailing with pastels, but let's say that was the first layer, okay, really light, and then I blended it in, and then I did another layer, really light, and then I blended it in, came back perhaps a bit of a thicker layer. Yeah, and then started building them up without blending till I got a big base down like that, and then I wanted to put a dark over the top. I could still do it, but if I came on straight away and pushed really hard and filled the tooth of the paper up like that, I won't get no more than one layer. Okay, so it depends on how hard you're kind of pushing and if you're rubbing it in or not. A lot of people don't rub those initial layers in, and then you're filling the tooth of the paper up too much too quick with it. Sometimes you do want a more blunt pencil, Michelle. That's absolutely correct. You don't need really sharp pencils all the time. And people, what you've got to think about as well, you know, when you're seeing all this work on Instagram and you think, my God, look at the detail of that. That's absolutely brilliant. How do they get the detail? What you're not seeing generally is the actual size of the artwork. And sometimes it could be, say, a tiger's head or something like that. And in reality, it's absolutely huge. It could be 3 foot. So that's how you get the detail in pastels, the extreme detail. So you imagine with this one now, if for instance I was doing this, the whole head, it'd be really big, probably 20 inches high. So that's how you can get the illusion then of you're putting in a lot of detail. So some people, they work too small, and then they really struggle to get any detail in there. You can't sharpen a pastel pencil like you can a coloured pencil. With coloured pencils you can really get it like a pinhead, like a needle surface on it. But with pastels you can't do that, so that's where you've got to work larger. But then we've got all those other benefits that I think still make them, for me, a nicer medium personally than coloured pencils. I just haven't got the patience and the time to work with coloured pencils negatively, which is the way I think I'd rather do it than to use coloured pencils on pastel mat. But it takes so long, and I've got lots of subjects, I said, that I want to actually do, so I don't want to be doing something forever, you know, and taking 100 hours all the time. 20 hours is probably enough more often than not for me when I'm doing my drawings. Okay, so that's starting to look a bit better. The blacks in the Caran d'Ache as well are nice and black. You think every pencil will be the same, but it's not. Like I say, if you want something really black, new pastel sticks, that'll be about as dark as you can go, really. You can get those in America easily. I had to get them in. Let's darken this section up by here as well. Make that stand out a bit more. So you can see now how once you've got the basics in, then you start to look for more refinement. And then you're looking to refine it more and more and more until in the end you find that there's nothing really you can do to change it or to adjust any more. You think, well, that's about it. And you can leave that where you want to leave it. Then that could be an early layer. You know, you could have it much more painterly, as I said earlier on, or keep going and going and going. Are you after the essence of the drawing of the animal? Or are you really after the extreme detail that you see perhaps on birds' feathers? And that's why we can all look at the same subject and end up with a different, completely different outcome and look. Any way to turn up the sound, I have my volume up all the way and still find it difficult to hear. A couple of people have said that, and then loads of people say the sound's okay. There's nothing I can do my end because my sound is already up on maximum. I guess I do start talking a bit quieter, so I'll try to talk a bit louder. But check your settings as well and your windows and things if you're on a PC, because sometimes there's another setting in there in the sound in the control panel. So perhaps it's down there at perhaps 70-80% rather than being up high like it should be. Just putting some of that roughness in there. Let's take that off now. And instead I'll use a bit of paper like that. So that needs to be much darker there. A bit darker coming up there, and that's going to be fairly light there. pastel over gouache is definitely okay. I've done that on quite a few videos now, and I'll be doing a video on clouds soon. I'll be on my Patreon channel, and I'm definitely I'm just pausing because I'm thinking I can't do two things at once. I'm definitely using gouache on that to be able to use the grey paper and still have really vibrant whites. So that's a way that you can get around. Remember I said about using a white paper for things like flowers? That's the way you can get around it. You can use a grey and then use your gouache to do that. The other alternative is to then do an underdrawing with pastels and really spray your fixative a lot, or do it even better. You can do like an underdrawing in charcoal and just look at the tonal area so you get whites in. There's a few ways around it. How can gouache sit on pastels? Well, I generally use gouache under the pastels. The pastels go on top. But it should be able to anyway. It should be okay. If you're just trying to put like a white of an eye in, then that should be okay. Don't put a lot of water with the gouache, and that should work fine. A bit bluer there. Yeah, the microphone I'm using is one of the top ones. It's called blue. It's called blue. It's like a snowball, like a big ball. But I think it's suited more for singing and things like that. And hey, don't start me on singing. But I think perhaps I might invest in another one, because I know I've got another mic, a Rode mic, but that actually switches or plugs into my digital SLR, so you can't use that for doing things like this with webcam. So I'll have to buy something else. And the way Amazon is at the moment, unless it's kind of certain items, everything seems to have down on it. It's not coming for a month, even though some things come the next day. I guess they're unsure of the way things are working out themselves, so I can't really take a chance then of ordering something. It's going to take a month to come, and I'm just waiting. So I'm a bit dubious of ordering much more really. Let me know as well if you've got any other requests of ideas for perhaps, you know, shorter videos. So by the time I finish this, we'll probably be looking at 3 hours or something, so it's not exactly a very short video. I don't want people getting bored, too bored watching these, because you haven't got the option then until you watch it on the kind of like the update or the YouTube to actually fast forward. So put a bit of texture in, see how this works. Don't forget as well, because I keep forgetting that I'm actually on YouTube and I'm not doing this on my Patreon, because I'm doing so many so many of my videos, almost all my videos are on Patreon. That's my art channel. Got around about 1,300 members on there, and you get to see hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of video on there for basically $1 a week, $4 a month, no contract. So you're not going to get much cheaper than that for a hobby of something like, say, you get access to all of the previous 3 years worth of video on the level you join at. So I'll put a link for that below, but it's all the W's. Patreon.com/wildlife art. As I say, it's about 1,300 members on there now, and I think it's done so well because it's basically such good value. Rather than charge a lot of money, I charge a little bit of money. Like I say, when we used to be able to go out and get coffee, I used to be about the price of 1 or 2 of them a week, and I say you get access to loads of real-time videos showing my best work on there. I've got beginners things, complete beginners as well, so that could be perhaps something else you'd keep in mind. Just a suggestion of detail. Do a peacock feather sometimes, good idea. Lots of different colours in there. And on my Patreon I tell you about the supplies, save a bit of money, as a member just said, because you're not buying things you don't need. I'm not one to preach to buy everything. If you want to enjoy your art, your hobby, and part of that is buying the supplies, fair enough. But a lot of these artists seem to, a lot of them are actually sponsored, and they really push in things that you don't really need. You don't need everything. It makes no difference to me in the slightest what materials or supplies you buy. I just want you to get things that work. When I started pastels years ago and I got the wrong supplies, no matter who I wasn't going to get them to work, but I didn't know at the time, and I give up on that. Pastels almost instantly, and I don't never really give up on art stuff. I keep going, challenging myself and battling through until I work out techniques and things like that to make it work to the best of my ability at the time. But I could not get that to work, and it turned out I was just using the wrong supplies. So a lot of what I show online is telling you what you need, and the big one is the paper type. My favourite is pastel matte, but other papers work, but they've got to have a surface on there that will hold layers, because if you haven't got the layers you can't do this. So if you use one of those ingress ombre papers with the ridges in there, when you start to try and blend, you know, when I was doing the beginning I was rubbing in hard with my fingers. When you start to do that, it'll just smudge completely together, and it'll keep doing that on every other layer. So you've got to use it almost like coloured pencils then, and I'm thinking, well, if I've got to use it like coloured pencils without the advantage of it being a coloured pencil, then I might as well just use coloured pencils. So what's the point? So that's why I don't use those types of papers. A couple of little hairs in there, and say I'm not going to go mad on this detail wise. I think it's coming along okay. It does look a bit like a Yeti, doesn't it? If you don't know what a gelato monkey looks like, have a look online. They've their eyes are so expressive. And well, and the rest of their face, they're the ones that like to put their top lip up over their nose. Basically goes up to their forehead. Have you all been able to manage to buy pasta and toilet paper? I was thinking of running a competition because I think I think we probably got 4 or 5 spare rolls, and perhaps do an art competition, and rather than have a big prize, we could have a toilet roll one. Crazy how they run out of a supply that doesn't affect this. There's nothing to do with the problem we got. I swear that some of the manufacturers must be setting off these panic buy things, because it just seems weird. As soon as I knew that this virus thing was going to be a bit of a problem, I started buying myself, to be honest. I bought extra pastel pencils and paper to make sure I had enough to see me through anything. The apocalypse. I was on tenterhooks then until it came, and then I could relax. That's where you've got to prioritise things. You need food, water. You want your family safe. Next on the list is pastel supplies and paints. And then I'm done. I'll let the nutters have the pasta. You think, oh my god, I may not be able to go out for a month. I tell you what, I get a nice pasta in. Fancy a nice pasta. In fact, I think I'd buy 15 bags of it, because even though I don't normally eat it, you never know. You never know. All of a sudden you may get up in the night, you think, oh, I haven't been out for a week. I tell you what, let's make up a big batch of pasta, just in case. Okay, it's starting to come together a bit more. Let's have a look at this blue. Bluey grey. It's a bit darker now, I think. What did people do before paper towels and toilet paper? We've got plenty of leaves on the mountain behind the house. I wonder if that's anything to do with it. I'd like to see a graph of the people that have bought the toilet paper and hoarded it. How many of those every day, because they don't go to work, to watch Jerry Springer as well, and those type of things. They're the same ones. So you see, I put a lighter colour down then, and I've tinged it then with that blue to try and give me a bit of that backlit blue look to it in there. I could, I suppose, blow that up a little bit, because you can work very lightly on the surface and blend things in. I think I'll darken some areas up here across the top. yeah, in the UK, someone was saying about getting supplies in. I did mention to Jackson's about getting various things in, and they said, yeah, no problem, we'll do that. And that was the end of that. Got a video coming soon from fantastic physio I use near me, and they're going to do us a video because lots of us artists have problems with our backs and our shoulders from sitting down too much and pushing quite hard now. I want a real dark defined line, so they're going to do a video. I've asked if they could show us some things we should be doing to help our backs and help our shoulders a lot more. Because it's hard to be relaxed when you're drawing and painting when you've got real problems. Okay, so put some lighter greys areas in. I tell you what, I think I'll put a few pencils down. I've got quite a few on the go at the moment. Everybody else do exactly the same as me and end up with a handful of pencils. So I'll pop some of them down, give my hand a rest. Have a look for some lighter greys, I think. A minute. That's a nice sharp one. Just go across like that.
Just saying, it's 100 minutes. I've copied loads of questions ready for you to answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's what I asked. Emma said maybe we could all send a request to Jackson's to stock the black new pastel stick. That's exactly what I asked them to do. So what happened with that, I don't know, to be honest. But that's the exact product I did ask them to get us all. But I think that physio video will be really helpful to us. I know when I went down there, they helped me out a lot. Also, let me have a quick look a minute. I want a light blue. If you look up something on YouTube called the Egoscue method, EGOSCUE method, that has helped me as much as anything to get out of pain. You know, when you've been let's just get them in a minute, but you know, if you've been painting or drawing a lot and you get up and you're really stiff and it hurts, well, that Egoscue method has helped me with that more than anything. And you can get a book online on one of your book sites. I'll mention any names, but it's in pretty much all of them. And you can get it cheap usually, but they've got lots of YouTube videos as well, and it really works. It kind of sets your posture back into place. Going really lightly with these little marks. And one of the biggest exercises, the main exercise, is just basically lying on the floor, but it's pushing your rounded back in place. And I found when I started doing it, it wasn't comfortable at all to just even lie flat on the floor. It was just showing me how bad my posture was. and now after a couple of weeks of doing that, I can lie flat on the floor with my back and no problems, and I can do drawings like this, and it's helping a lot. So that's the Egoscue method, but you've got to actually do the exercises for it to work. You know, these days we spend a lifetime getting into this bad posture position, and then we expect to get out of it within a week or a day. It's not going to happen. So you've actually got to put in the work with it. But when you do put in the work, I saw a very, very quick improvement. That's getting a bit closer now, isn't it? A bit closer. Not looking so bad. Where's that colour gone? So you can see, so if I gave you kind of this drawing half hour ago and said finish it off, you know, you've got to, that map underneath makes it a lot easier, and that's why I keep saying to keep layering and keep going with it. Don't give up on it too early, because all of a sudden it starts to fit into place. Just half hour you think, oh, now it's working. All of a sudden I've turned a corner, now it's working. Gone through the ugly stage, and that happens all the time, the ugly stage. I have that in the morning. Sometimes I go through the ugly stage even before I pick up my pastel pencils. Sometimes I never get out of it. So I'm just lightening up here. Texture. I say, I'm not looking at every line, not worried about every tiny little line going in. Doesn't need to be identical. Let's put in a few of these darker creases. I'll add a bit more realism. Come a bit darker across here, a bit darker there. Minimum 40-minute walk per day cures back problems. It certainly goes a long way to it. For sure, exercise and keeping mobile helps, but personally I didn't find it cured it. For me, certainly helped. I completely agree with you there, that it really helps. But sometimes you need help, a bit more aggressive help, to get into the posture that your body should be in this, or perhaps it's how far gone an individual may be. As to how effective Jess, I think if you catch it early enough, then, you know, walking on his own probably go a long way to solving a lot of problems. But I think if you've got it ingrained in you, like I had, even though I used to do weight training, you know, a lot of fitness type training, weight training, I still had major posture problems after not doing that so much, but sitting down and doing this a lot. And before this I had a job in an office, and then that wasn't good either for my posture. So I was sitting down there, and then when we come home, what we normally do is sit down there as well. Okay, looking okay. A few of these hairs up the top. Made by Dawn. I'm a nurse. My back issues is not from art, but from caring. Yeah. But it's pretty much always, unless you've got some structural problem, from the posture of whatever you're doing with work, or sometimes it's like your hips. If you watch that Egoscue method, you'll see that very often the body's just out of line, and the hips are out of line, and that has a knock-on effect up to the shoulders as well. So unless you tackle the root cause, as they say, then it just keeps going, keeps sometimes just like transfers from one area to another as well. Yeah, walking good for the heart as well. If you're allowed to get out in nature now, that's one thing I miss. We don't go out very much at all now, which is not great. Okay, so coming together now, not too bad for something that's not, you know, a real major piece of work. Hope you like these new videos. It's a lot more relaxed than my tutorial type of main videos that I do. Not saying more relaxed, but you know, I'm chatting away instead of just being really into instructing on the drawing aspect of what I'm doing all the time. Nice change for me as well. Let's bring some of these lighter areas up here. Let's bring some of that hay through down, put a bit of brown over there as well. Right, now I can squint at it, look at it as a whole, and start to think. Now as I'm just putting in kind of like final things. Just trying to read if I got any more questions as well. If you've got anything to ask at all, just fire away. Now's your chance. Because it's not, I won't be too much longer with this one. So anything you want to ask away. I wonder what different countries, I wonder if there's a way I can tell what different countries actually joined in for this. My second ever live stream, so as you could see at the beginning I had problems, so I'm still getting used to that. It's not the most intuitive thing to do these live streams. You've got to have about 3 programs going all at once, because unless you're just doing something on your phone, it can be a bit difficult. But we get in there in the end. Yeah, the main reason that I pushed for this, I've been thinking about doing live streams for a while, but the main reason I pushed is once I could see that the age group that usually is on my Patreon channel is usually about, the average age would be about 60 plus, and I knew that that was going to be the age that was really more likely to be affected by this and quarantined and pretty much ordered by the governments to stay indoors. And a lot of those people may also be living on their own. So my whole plan then was to try and quickly get this in place so that I could hopefully reach those people. So I gone past like the squinty stage a while ago, whereas I'm now looking, so I'm at the detail stage, you know, just putting in the fine detail. But if you find squinting to hurt your eyes, it's probably not very good for your eyes. The other way to do it then is in your image editing program to just blur it. So you can go usually something like filter blur, and then you've got Gaussian blur in there. That's the one that will do it the harshest, and then you blur it till all the details gone, and what you're seeing then is really the true, you know, the real major colors and tones that are on there, rather than the just thinking. That's why when I think my lips go weird. I can't think and do this at the same time. Rather than get distracted by all the details, you get to just look then at the main colors, main elements like that. So virtually every image editor, those free image editors will do it. Don't think you've got to go and get Photoshop, although I rent that personally. Is much more accessible now when you can rent these things. But I show on my Patreon channel that there's lots of free programs I show on there. I'm using those that do all these things, so you haven't got to go spending any money at all, and they don't come with loads of adverts either. So it's really cool that we can do stuff like that without spending a load of money on it. So that's another thing I show on my videos. My Patreon is not just about art lessons as such. I also try to show you other things you need to know, like you need to be able to do composition. You need to be able to work out composition. You need to know what makes a good reference photo, for instance. Just looking for my black that I probably put down, my blackest blacks. Let's punch things up a bit. So it's, you know, you need to learn how, when you're looking at a reference photo, what makes a good reference photo. You need to know all this before you start drawing it, because you don't want to be halfway through and think, oh, I don't know, you know what, I don't think that looks right now. Actually, it's not difficult. There's simple rules, composition, so that's another thing to cover. Oh, hang on. Scott Hamilton, great question. How do you get back into something you left for too long? Well, do you know what? I've done that a couple of times, and I'll tell you what the simple answer is, and you know it already. Don't actually let it go like that, because that's the times that I've been broken with it and struggled. And that's what I'm afraid of will happen with my gorilla if I don't get on with that. The one that I was going to put in that exhibition, which got called off with all this business. So I've got to get into it. Now, I tell you a way to do it though, right? Is to say to yourself now, right, tomorrow, I'm not going to make a massive dent in that, or I'm not going to try and finish it all in one go. But you know what? I'm going to, Scott, I know the one you were on about. You say, I'm going to do a bit of that painting tomorrow, no matter what. I'm getting all my supplies out ready the night before, and before I get distracted with the day, right, I'm gonna do an hour on that, or I'm gonna do 10 minutes on that, whatever, and do it. Get up, have your breakfast, whatever, get on it, do it, and I guarantee that you won't just spend 10 minutes on it. You'll get back into it and you'll remember why you loved that reference photo. Because don't not finish that one, because it's a major piece you're working on. I want to see that finished. You've gone over and done the hard part of that elephant drawing now. The details on top are the easy bit. It's nothing, you got that. What happened? You burnt yourself out a little bit because it's so large but now you should be able to get back into that and finish it off, because it'll be a real shame if you leave it much longer. Now's your opportunity. A lot of people to see this being stuck in the house now as, you know, a real bad chore, but there's nothing we can do about it. So use it now as opportunities to do things like that you may not have had time before to do. You can do it now. And crack on with it. Don't stress up about it so much. You can do it. We play these games with our minds and make things worse than they really are. A lot of times. In everything. Don't think I've got much more to do on it now. Just having a quick look. Just having a quick look. See if there's any more questions. If you've got any more questions, keep going, because I'm wrapping this one up soon. Not a great deal left to do. Turned out alright, because it looked rubbish earlier on. That left eye, I think what threw me was the problems I had at the beginning with the feed. That knocked me a bit. Just lightening up some areas. I thought I was going to be letting a lot of people down when that sound wasn't working properly. I tried my best not to do that. My wife loves these new live feeds that I'm doing. Now we're quarantined like this, gets me from under her feet. So I think I'll be doing a lot more of these. She pushes me up here and locks the door to the studio on the outside. So I think, well, I might as well start recording. I'm trying some different times a day as well. See if this one worked a bit better to reach. I'd look at the world times to see if I could find something that was more suitable for UK and both sides of the USA and Europe, but couldn't really get Australia to easily fall into that because their time is so different. But I may do some an early morning one once, perhaps, to see if I can include them as well. Okay, general, stretch my back, general look now. Last bit. My watch once again is telling me, is checking in to see if I've died at the table. It's buzzing and telling me, get up, move, you fool. Are you alright? I'm alright. So I'm just going to put a couple of finishing touches. This boost that blue up in the eye a bit. Go a little bit lighter but there. And then go a bit bluer. What have we got? There's lots of blue colours to pick from. Then there's not many flesh colours out there. You find that you get a lot of the earth colours too. it's inspiring to see things like David said. I've got him back into art. Art is an important thing, I think. Craft in general, not necessarily art as such, but doing things like this can help a lot, can't it? Okay, should we call that done? I don't think I need to play around much more with that, really. Now, a couple of little highlight areas by here perhaps, just to finish that corner off. And I think I'll call that done. So as I'm gonna end the feed, and we've got that time delay and all that going on, then if you've got any questions now in the next minute, post them a bit quick and I'll try and answer them now while I'm not doing much of the art bit, or you can save them for the next video. I'm not sure what that's going to be, if anyone got any ideas for that. Then I'm totally up for any suggestions of ideas of what you would like me to do next. Like I say, if you could keep it fairly simple, then it means it's not going to go on for, you know, like 2 sessions over 3 hours, because I've still got to do my Patreon art channel main videos as well. So nothing, don't go saying like it'd be lovely to see loads of zebras in a African scene all running and jumping, because it's just going to take me too long. But you know, if you said, could you show us a technique for zebra stripes, then that I can do. Yeah, different question. As I answered earlier on, yes, pastel matte surfaces are slightly different on some colours, but the ones I use most often, the greys, browns, siennas, they're pretty much the same, so I don't find much problem with that personally. But if you're the type of person who's using lots of different colours, then you may well find that the surfaces are different. So there we go. I don't know how long I went for this time. I've kind of, I think we got through a good few questions. This was a difficult side, much more difficult side to draw than this side, because of those unusual colours that are in there as well. So I'm just fiddling now, just to use up a bit of the time, because then I'll be going and pushing the button. Can you mix pastels with polychromos or Caran d'Ache luminance? Did have that earlier on. I did answer that one. The answer was you can use coloured pencils on top of pastels, but not underneath, because they'll resist. 2 hours, blinking heck. Okay. So, there was a little bit of pressure at the beginning, wasn't it? But we got there. We did it. So next time, hopefully, I know now to turn off that sound. Why that even went on, I don't know. Just put a couple of little highlights here and there. So yeah, if you've been bouncing back and forth with this, one of the secrets to being more productive is get on with it before your day drags you away. Prepare the night before, even if that means getting your pencils out, getting your paints. Give yourself as much chance of easily being able to create something as you can. Don't have lots of obstacles in the way, like, oh, I've got to get my pencils and kit out of the, you know, thing, I've got to set the light up, I've got to do this and all that. Try and get it as easy as possible to start. Once you start, you're 90% there. You owe it to yourself now to be doing stuff that to relax you, and you can feel proud of it as well at the end. So we don't get to feel that much, and lots of times these days it seems like you're not allowed to be happy with something. It seems like you're showing off, but do it for yourself. Am I going to remove the tape? There is no tape. That's just a blue pastel matte paper. That's it. So there's no tape unveiling like you see some artists do with the edge at all. But what I would do then, this will probably just go on my studio wall. There's something to look at before I pack it away. And I got a video then showing how to store your work safely and easily. So okay, let's call that done. I'm going to push the button, and thank you all for joining me. It's quite long live streams, I think. Hope I didn't bore all of you to death. I think we maintained a good crowd. Get your questions ready for next time. If you've got any ideas of what you want me to do next time, let me know. You should all be able to find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, you name it. I'm pretty much on there. On my Patreon channel, I put a load of links below this because it takes a little while for this to go live. And everybody, hope you've enjoyed it. Stay safe, do what you got to do. Hopefully in the next couple of days I'll be back bringing something new. I'll probably look at a new microphone as well, because a few of you have been mentioning about that, so I know there's got to be some sort of issue, and when I'm doing my videos I know I've got to increase the volume on the mic then. So thank you very much, and I'll see you all again real soon.